Okay, so we left off last week with Noah and his family. Um, he comes out of the ark. God does what he does. He saves his people, right? Um, and in fact, just as a side note, Second Peter chapter, First Peter chapter 3. I'm sorry, you have baptism. Actually, Peter will use the blood, connecting it with baptism, right? But I just want to highlight the fact that when Noah comes out, God reinstitutes the original covenant that he made with Adam and Eve, that they are to be fruitful and multiply. And that he even goes beyond and gives him government. In other words, uh, in this case, it was by, if anyone sheds blood, by man's blood, he should be shed, including animals. But the point being is that even though man has fallen, we are no longer who we once were with Adam and Eve. God has not rescinded the original, right? The original covenant of being fruitful and multiply, to rule and subdue the earth. It's not, so it's going to be a lot harder now. But I just think that's highly significant going forward because God's not giving up on that idea. We were always meant to be his representatives in creation. We were always meant to rule. And when I say that, we get negative connotations, right? But really, and no, in a good way, the way that God would rule. God, in fact, we'll see with the church that God reigns through us. Jesus reigns through us. So I think it's really important to see that, okay, God is not, because you would think after sin entering the world, that God would back out of it and say, nope, you're no longer fit to do what you were originally meant to do. But no, he's sticking with it. And we see that even when you go to Second Samuel, it's what you're really seeing. It's almost like God is looking for someone that he can give his power to. And everyone he gives a certain amount of authority to, he does well for a while, even the best ones, and then they tend to, they're less than what we would hope for. And that's what we keep seeing in humanity. Everyone is like not all they cracked up to be. And even today, presidents, we're finding, oh, you're not what you're cracked up to be. No one's is cracked up what they should be. And then Jesus comes along, right? So we're much further along in the story. But in any case, so far we just left Noah. And now we're going to talk about what is known as the table of nations. In other words, Noah now is to go out and to repopulate the earth, right? And so what we're going to be reading through is what is known as a table of nations. Interestingly, if you count the number of um, the names of families in here, you get 70. And 70 is a very significant number. 70 nations, think of if you remember in Luke, when Jesus sends out the 70, right? The Sanhedrin, there was 70. When the um, when the elders that were with Moses went up to the mount, I believe, and Moses was remember he would receive the law. 70 went up. They didn't go as far. They stayed down, and they actually saw the Lord. Well, anyway, 70. Um, Interestingly, too, uh, I think even in your ancient pagan texts with Baal, the god Baal, he had a council of 70. And that'll become more significant when you bring it up. Anyway, get to 70. And so when you see in your Bible, the New Testament, Gentiles, see, we think in terms of the, independent. Well, no, actually, nations. With the Gentiles are the 70 nations. That's how we are viewed as. We were part of those guys. Remember, Israel is not in here because Israel has not been. Doesn't come. So Abraham comes along, and he. Someone like said, God's just. I'm going to put a whole new nation. Y'all are gone way south. I'm going to start. We see it all. Say with Noah, everything went south. I'll take you, and I'll start over, and we're going to go right back. I'll take you, Abram, and I'm going to create it right. And we We know how the story goes, okay? Well, anyway, so we'll read through some of these names. We'll highlight some of them. I think you'll recognize some of the names. If I mess up the pronunciation of them, which I'm sure I will, y'all probably won't know anyway. So, yeah, yeah. And I never really, and I should, I've not really taken a lot of time like trying to make sure I get the names said right. I probably should. I just never was. I was that interested. Yeah. I had it. Well, but even though you might get, they may not be right. That's another thing. I did have a book where it gave me the pronunciation of names, and I don't know what I did with it. Anyway, these are the generations of. Remember that told Dolt I was telling you about? New section, right? These are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Sons were born to them after the flood. The sons of Japheth, and not as near as much is written about them as the sons of Ham, which will become evident why, right? Gomer, Magog. Now, Magog's interesting. Remember, if you Gog and Magog, you read about that in Ezekiel 37, 38. Remember in Revelation 21, right at the very end, Gog and Magog. Interesting. In fact, there is actually some uh, ancient traditions with giants being tied with them, interestingly enough. But we're going to get to the giants later on. Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. The sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Harry Potter has a book with Ashkenaz in. I kind of wondered, they knew what they were doing when they named Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. The sons of Javan, Elisha, Tarshish. Tarshish, now that's interesting because I think, if I'm not mistaken, Jonah to Tarshish, I think is where he. This is basically to go to Tarshish, which I think is in the Europe area, Europe. He was wanting to go as far away as he could away from the Lord. It's kind of like we would say when we'd say, "Okay, you're trying to get away from someone. I'm going to China, as far as on the other side of the earth, right?" Okay, uh, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. I think Kittim is associated with what will eventually become the Romans. But somewhere in there, the Philistines is what we'll get to that. From these, the coastland people spread in their lands, each with his own language, by their clans in their nations. I think they settled up in the northern Mesopotamia area, almost north up into Europe, what we would now call Europe. Back then, no, they had no concept of that. Okay, yeah. The sons of Ham. Now we're getting some. We know because remember earlier, Ham didn't receive the curse, even though he's the one who did the deed. It was Canaan. Bizarre. The sons of Ham, Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. The sons of Cush, Seba, Havilah, Sapta, Rama, and Saptika. The sons of Ramath, Sheba and Dedan. Sheba, queen of Sheba. We're getting it all into the giant clans, and we're getting right. And these folks aren't good. We're gonna right. They become the. You're gonna be reading now in First Samuel, Second Samuel, King, all the enemies of Israel right here. We're seeing where they come from the cursed line. But even in their diamonds in the rough, Queen of Sheba, right? Cush. Now here we go. We get these names. Okay. And all of a sudden, as if the writer's saying, you need to check this one out, though, he stops for a minute, right? Uh, Cush fathered Nimrod. I think that name is like rebel. So there's a good indication that's not really his name, right? Oftentimes the Hebrew writers will like put a name to him, rebel. That's who he is. There is connections with him being the god Ninurta, which I think is fascinating. Anyway, he was the first on earth to be a mighty man, a Gibberim. Sometimes that term Gibberim is associated with the giants, right? He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. So he was what? Pretty good at hunting rabbits? Pretty good at hunting deer? Or he was pretty good at hunting men, people? Yeah, I think it's more that. I think it's more, and I think oftentimes you will see like mighty hunter associated with a king, right? With all their exploits. So it would seem to make sense because be a mighty hunter as in, I mean, okay, if you're in Arkansas, Tennessee, you're loving that title, mighty hunter, but I don't think that how they because you can get deer. No, no, you're a mighty hunter. You took down people. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore, it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. He is going to be associated, I believe, with the Tower of Babel, which we're going to get to. Okay. The beginning of his kingdom was, oh, Babel. We know about Babylon, right? Erech, Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar, or Sumer. From that land, he went into Assyria and built, oh, another one, Nineveh. All the, of course, remember Jonah, Nineveh was brutal. Nineveh was a city before, then came Babylon, right? Uh, what's that? They did that time. Later on, they did not. That is correct. Rehoboth or Kala, right? And Rezin between Nineveh and Kala. That is the great city. We hear that term great. Last time I remember hearing great city, we went to Revelation, that great city. City builder. Nimrod was a city builder. But see, it's okay. Not a lot is said here, but yet there's more said about him, kind of like Enoch, right? Not a lot was said about Enoch, but clearly the writer's saying you need to look at this guy more, right? Because why do this at all? Okay. I do think that what you're seeing with Nimrod, because he's going to be connected with Babylon, and Hammurabi. So when you think Babylon, the original Babylon, don't think Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was the Neo Babylon. In other words, let's make Babylon great again. That came a lot later. But the original Babylon, Hammurabi, right? That came way earlier. That very well might have been what the Tower of Babel was about. But see, what made Hammurabi and Babylon so awesome, as they would tell you, because we have the secret knowledge from before the flood, right? When the giants ruled, when the Nephilim ruled, when the gods ruled, see that golden age? Well, there was like Cain, remember Cain? Well, that's all that knowledge that Cain and them received from the gods that came down. Well, we got that. So our religion's better, our gods are better, we're smarter, we got awesome, right? And so I think what's the writer's saying is, uh-oh. Remember? And uh, afterwards, the Nephilim, here we go again. In other words, here we go again. I think that's what the writer's pointing to. We can't seem to get rid of these giants, which, by the way, giants, often they don't have to necessarily mean big size. You could think of a giant as like a thug, like a strong man, right? Right. It's just anyway. Did not necessarily have to be. Right. But of course, other times they were. The big ones are the ones that. By the way, when you read in the Samuel, right, and you get to uh, Saul. Notice how he describes Saul. And what did they say they wanted? They wanted a king like the other nations. Because the big guys are the ones that, right? That's who you want. It was the big guy. And so, yes. And so that's kind of you want like, okay, here we go. And he started out well. But anyway, but this is I think is what is going on here. And I think the writer wants us to see, yep, we're it's not going away. And we even today we see the same, we see that we'll get to that. Okay. Anyway, Egypt. Egypt. They're going to play a part. Man, all these guys come from Ham. Holy cow. Fathered Ludim, Anamim, Lehabim, Naphtuhim, Pathrusim, Kazluhim, from whom the what? Philistines came. Okay. And Caphtorim, right? And it's interesting that I think the Philistines at one point somehow are associated with the island of Crete. They were coastal land peoples. Well, Crete has all kinds of stuff, artifacts, and evidence of giants, right? They got quite a history, right? Where some of the locals, right, who go would tell you, yes, these things were built by the giants. And anyway, we know that the Philistines have some giants because we know there's one Philistine who kind of came out, Goliath, right? I noticed that in Egypt's sons, all of their names end in I am. So I am must be some kind of. I am are plural. Yeah. Yeah, when you see that, like the I am, so El, God, Elohim, God. Though that's why sometimes Elohim could be translated gods. So it kind of depends on, yeah. So basically, like would be Lud. Yeah, the Ludim and the Anamim, Lahabim, the Nephthahim, the Pathrusim, Casluhim, yep, and the Captorim. Oh, wait, Canaan. We know that now he was the one who was cursed, huh? Fathered Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth. And of course, if I'm not mistaken, could be wrong, but in that Sidon area is where the lady we all dream about having as a wife, Jezebel. Holy cow. Okay, so Canaan fathered Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth. And the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, the Arkites, the Sinites, the Arvadites, the Zemarites, and the Hamathites. Afterward, the clans of the Canaanites dispersed. These are all giant clans. It's important for us to understand because these are the ones that God is going to eventually say, you need to take them out. Joshua. It's got to be Joshua. Joshua. And we know that he didn't get them all because the Philistines still, remember, they did not drive them all out. This is a big part of why King David then was brought in. And that's why you will see, like, all of a sudden you're reading through the story of King David, and he starts talking about all the exploits of the 30 and how one of them jumped into a pit, and there was an Egyptian that was as big like Goliath, and how another one killed Goliath's brothers. Why do they keep bringing that up? Because these are the last remnants of the giants that need to be taken out. They were supposed to be taken out a super long time ago. David, when he was running from Saul, he hung out. He did for a little while. Yeah. Yes, but didn't he even want to go to war with him? Faking schmoozery. That's what he was doing. He's faking it. Yeah, and they were smart. Yeah, they were. The king were dopes. The king was a dope, but they were like, "Are you kidding me, bro?" No. Yeah. Okay. And the Canaanite and the territory of the Canaanites, verse 19, extended from Sidon in the direction of Gerar as far as Gaza, and in the direction of oh. No, wait a minute. He's like, get this right. So you got Ham, who we're thinking maybe he did something really uncool. And we got Sodom and Gomorrah, Well, they kind of fall into the same kind of uncool stuff. You see what I'm saying? Kind of weird connection, huh? Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim, as far as Lasha. Verse 20, these are the sons of Ham by their clans, their languages, their lands, and their nations. So you can picture, like, Israel hearing all this, getting ready to go into the promised land. They're going, oh, well, this explains a lot. Okay. Okay. Well, well, that's the same. I'm not so sure. So yeah, we want to jump ahead of ourselves in that one. To Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the elder brother of Japheth, children were born. By the way, Eber, there is some talk that Eber was actually the original Hebrew, where we get Hebrew from. Uh, all this is really dicey because okay, in the New Testament, we got all kinds of like written. You get back to, okay, we don't really have, it's really hard to place this stuff. We're talking ancient, and it's just really hard to find, right? But anyway, the sons of Shem, verse 22, Elam, Ashur, oh boy, Arpachshad, Lud, and Aram. The sons of Aram, Uz, I want to say Job is somehow connected with that. Hul, Gether, and Mosh. Arpachshad fathered Shelah, and Shelah fathered Eber. To Eber were born two sons. The name of the one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided. What do you think that's referencing to? When was the earth divided? Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Tower of Babel, most likely. So, when we read the Tower of Babel, right, it's not like, okay, first we read all this, then this happens. No, the Tower of Babel would have happened in this this time, right? We write our history all nice chronologically. No, that's not. No, there are more themes. Okay, so anyway, and his brother's name was Joktan. Verse 26, Joktan fathered Almodad, Sheleph, Hazarmaveth, Jerah, Hadaram, Uzal, Dikla, Obal, Abimael, Sheba. Interesting. Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. He cranked them out, didn't he? Good for him. The territory in which they live extended from Mesha in the direction of Sephar to the hill country of the east. These are the sons of Shem by their clans, their languages, their lands, and their nations. So I think, yeah, so a lot of the Shemites would have been Mediterranean, in the Mesopotamian area, east. So then Ham, down here, lower, right? Got Egypt and Africa. Uh, Up north would be your Japheth. I think over here is where we find, because they're over to the east of Israel, which is on the Mediterranean, would have been Babylon, Nimrod, right? Anyway, it's kind of cool to get the maps out. Could be. Yeah. Uh-huh, I think so. Yep. Yeah. They brought gold back from there. Mm-hmm. No, that's fine. No, that's good. These are the clans of the sons of Noah, according to their genealogies, in their nations. And from these the nations spread abroad on the earth after the flood. Wow, huh? And it's very possible that the writer maybe left some out, maybe the 70. It's fascinating, the 70. Remember, they're interested in them. Remember how we talked about this Matthew to the genealogy? He's much more interested in the symmetrical, what is it, 14, 14 to 14? Mm-hmm. Yeah, the 70 is fascinating. Well, we'll get to that in a minute, why that is. Um, okay. Not much to comment on, right? We have any questions, anything about? Well, Noah did, I think, what? Blessed Shem and said that Japheth will dwell with the tents of Shem. Um, let's see. Um, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be to his brothers. He also said, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan, which we know comes from the line of Ham, and of course is also the son of Ham, his grandson, be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. Which we talked about possibly why that was. Because if we were to understand that it was Ham having relations with his mother to produce Canaan. So imagine if you're like, so if whatever history, you could see the narrative is written there. So if you're one of those other nations, you're kind of like, or you don't, you could see the bad blood before we could start. Isn't it interesting? Yeah. And we don't have that here in America because we're a great big melting pot. And at least you have something of a certain kind of bloodline heritage, being from the South, like you are. We're all from in California. We had none of that. We're a melting pot state in a melting pot country, right? And but anyway, so we have a hard time kind of understanding, but we can see it. Okay, Tower of Babel. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. Well, we're now pinpointing on this is before. We're going to find out why they got different languages. But right. But we said that the Tower of Babel happened within this. Yes. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. And let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built. And the Lord said, Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and there and there confuse their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, or Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth.
Which was pretty clever of them when you think about it. See why God said, can't let this. What else will they think of to do? Can you imagine?
Okay, why do you say it's clever?
Well, it's a kind of a poor choice of words, maybe, but I can't think of a better word. Hey, let's do this. The fact that they thought it a good idea.
What's a good idea about it?
Well,
Why do you say that it's good?
no, I said that from their vantage,
William, from their vantage point, why do you think it's why is it?
why do I think?
Yeah,
Well,
why would you being a and one of this group? Why?
wow,
What are they attempting to do?
getting up to where God is. At least that's what I build it up into heaven. Yeah, we're going to be up there where God is. We'll be able to see what He does.
Is that what you think they're trying to do? Should we say, is that what we think they're doing?
Um, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with the top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves.
That's kind of what we would be told in Sunday school, right? But is that true, or are we kind of like ruining our Sunday school now? We gotta like rethink everything. All oh, you mean Mrs. Smith was wrong about this, huh?
But I mean, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for
Yeah.
ourselves.
So if we're building a tower to the heavens, and why not God just say, keep going, and you'll just run out of oxygen, and then that'll be that.
That wouldn't have occurred to me either.
Okay.
But
What else?
making a name for themselves.
So what?
We're gonna.
So they make a name for themselves. They want to go look into heaven. What do they want to do? Why is it a good idea? So what's a good idea if you're one of them? What what is it that attract? Okay, what is it that attracts you about what they're doing? If you're one of them, so I'm not saying if you're one. So what is it exactly that attracts you? You said it's a good. Well, what? Why? What is it about? You go, oh, okay, this is a good idea.
Yeah, that's build it up there to where we can go up there and see what God is doing too.
Okay, so you're liking the venture that they might be able to get up there and see a little higher of what God's doing, see His plans.
Yeah.
Maybe they could find out what the chariot race, who's going to actually win, put some money on
Okay.
it.
Yeah. But I
Okay,
mean, look at how smart we are that we're able to do this.
okay,
Build a tower up to where God is.
okay. So you're liking the idea of the ambition too, like, yeah, I dig your ambition, man. You're gonna go for it. You're gonna build it. Okay. I'm not doing it. I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure out like what is it exactly that you think.
Yeah, I thought that was clever.
Yeah.
Well, I guess because let's build us with his top in the heavens.
Because when we were in Sunday school, we thought the opposite. We thought, what a bunch of morons. You're not going to build a tower to reach God in the heavens. So, but you're coming from the other side. I like it.
No, I'm just thinking, wow, you guys are pretty clever.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. No.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So that yeah. Okay. And
Yeah, but I mean, let's see what we can do. What'll stop us from, from here we can keep going and do all kinds of awesome things.
well, okay. And so if we draw an allusion to today from that, I mean, sometimes we get that impression. So why are you building something that's a little bit taller than the Empire State Building? You might say, well, that's a great idea. They're building it taller. Some of them would say, and the point of it is, though, the point of it is we're building it taller.
Yeah, I don't
Because man could do what man could triumph and do whatever he wants to do.
Yeah, I don't know
Okay.
necessarily the thought beyond the immediate. No, no thoughts to the future or anything, just the immediate.
We're going to be, yeah, we're going to be getting to that. That's good. I'm just kind of like, but that is one thing. So kind of man's achievement.
Yeah, there
So
you
take,
go.
man's achievement of, but to the point, you really couldn't draw out though what was really good about it, other than you thought it was so. That's sometimes that's what we feel about a city, and we're like, isn't that amazing? And we're like,
Yeah,
what's the point of this?
yeah.
Is it really?
I think they want to say, hey, look at us, we're the biggest God, we
Yeah.
can build this.
So to your point, you brought, let us make a name for ourselves.
Yeah, let us make a name for ourselves. Wow, look at how awesome are we? Oh my goodness. We're pretty darned awesome.
So do you think what's the impression here? Are they acting in the will of God?
Oh no. Oh no.
So something about what God wants them to do, they are like putting the brakes onto it. And what is interesting, because if you remember, we probably if you read the next chapter over, where one of the promises that God makes to Abraham in the covenant is what? I will make your name great. So that was an important, and one thing that's important about having your name. See, we're also talking about legacy, right? One of the things that they believe that, and it's still true today in other cultures, where that's why you have like relative worship, right? Ancestor worship, because you need your ancestors to be paying attention to you to kind of continue to like to be helping you along in the afterlife. There's also the idea of like existence. You read it in your Old Testament where you cease to exist when people are no longer talking about you,
Mm.
right? That when people stop talking about you and saying your name, you no longer exist. And by the way, you can see that even like today, we have this thing where we want to keep the person's name out there. We want to remember them because if we once we stop talking about them and you got people close to us, right? Then that's it. They're gone. Uh, they go one step further and like you kind of cease to exist. That's why David will say things I won't about the gods. I won't name them. Won't even come on my lips, right? Um, Something else was going to kind of oh, and that would explain too why then how can you be remembered? Well, I can have my name put on a pew. Sorry, some churches, but no, you will do great things, great exploits, so that they'll be talking about me all the time. And so that was a big thing for
In
them.
Chicago, they had the Sears Tower. There was a person
Yeah,
named Sears.
yeah.
So I mean,
Well, we already forgot about it. We didn't
I
know.
mean this building.
Yeah,
So as long as that building stays there with his name on it,
yeah,
then he is still remembered as this great guy.
yeah,
New York has Trump Tower.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Okay.
but yes, I get your point. As long as the name is there, then
Well, and they kind of took it to like a different degree. But we kind of do similar things. But okay, so they're looking to make a name for them. They don't want to spread out.
right.
Remember, there's spread out and to fill and multiply the earth. No, we want to come together, right?
And make a name for ourselves.
And now this tower reaching into the heavens. That just seems highly unlikely that that's what they're trying to do. Actually, reach to heaven the way we would think to kind of peer in there. Particularly the way that God answers that, right? Which we'll get to that in a minute. But what they were doing, yeah, what we kind of know now from archaeology, they're building a ziggurat. And the ziggurat looked a lot like a pyramid, but they were totally different because you never went inside a ziggurat. It was all filled in. A ziggurat was like Interestingly enough, I think a song by Led Zeppelin, A Stairway to Heaven, right? It was a stairway. It was kind of connecting heaven and earth. And so you weren't trying to get into heaven. You were trying to bring the God down. And so on the top of the ziggurat, nobody went to the ziggurat. You didn't, it was sacred. You went to a temple off to the side of it. There was like a little room at the very top, maybe with a bed and something else. And you were trying to call the God down. And then often you would have some kind of a ceremony with the idol, almost like you're trying to trap the God in the idol so that you can manipulate it, right? That's how paganism worked. If you just do the right formula, you can manipulate the God to get it to do what you wanted to do, which was a problem for the pagans about Yahweh, because Yahweh had no needs. You can't manipulate him. You ain't got nothing I want, right? But anyway, what was it again? Oh, anyway, so that's what the ziggurat. If you remember Paul, I'm trying to remember which book it was. He was kind of quoting Deuteronomy, so it'd be, I want to say it'll be in Ephesians, right? So when it says, "Who will go into heaven?" and he's quoting, that is to bring Christ down. It was never to go into heaven. It was to bring the God down, right? And so that's the thinking here. We're going to build a ziggurat, and we're going to, right? We're going to bring our God down into it. We're going to build a city all around this ziggurat. We're going to make a name for ourselves, and we're just going to like get along and do our business without God. Right? We don't need him. And here's right. And so what happens after that, Lisa? What happens next? It's kind of funny. Well, before, what's the first thing that God does?
He comes down.
He comes down.
Yeah.
So they wanted God to come down. Well, guess what? The Lord says, I'm going to come down. Yes, sir.
In verse 7, it's interesting. If my Bible says, "Come, let's go down."
Yeah.
That's multiple.
Yes.
That's not just him.
Yes.
Let us go down.
Yes.
Yeah.
I noticed that.
That's excellent. We also saw that in the beginning, right, with the creation. Okay, now remember more traditional understanding. If you go into one of our churches, they'll say that's the Trinity. I'm not one of those. I think it's more of God's entourage, right? In other words, right? He's talking with who's always his aim. He's talking with all his cohort. Oh, really? Well, I think we need to go investigate. I'm going to go investigate. Let's go down. Let's go. We're going to investigate here. Okay. And I'll come down all right, right? And when it says things like God comes to visit, it's not like Grandpa's coming over for tea. It's like, no, God's going to come. He's going to sort things out, right? Oh, really? Really? Okay. Now here's the interesting thing, though. Remember, God. What did God promise Noah? He would never wipe out the flood. So it's like he can't do that.
Like a flood. He said, I will never.
So he does it. So what does he do? He just scatters them.
Uses
And
their
that's what he wanted
language.
to do to begin with.
Yeah.
Multiply.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not
Okay.
say one flock.
Yeah.
But so he confuses their language.
Fascinating.
Which is the best way to keep people apart.
Fascinating. And by the way, okay, so just as a side note, so he confuses their language. That's how he's gonna deal with it. What happens in Acts chapter 2? Pentecost.
Or they were all talking and everyone, no matter what language they spoke, they could hear
The reverse of Babel, right? The reverse. Okay. Now what's interesting, and this is why, again, in our Sunday school class, they kind of portray, here's a bunch of dumb larks, they're trying to build, a tower. they're trying to reach to heaven, and God says, no, you can't do that. And he kind of blows the whole thing up. And, some of the smarter kids are kind of like, well, why not just let them keep building? Why you got to stop them? If you have, it's like your kids. You see them working on something, let them keep going. At least they're stay out of trouble. And eventually, how high I think they're going to get? Because obviously, you can't reach heaven. You're not going to. But yet, God takes it kind of serious, doesn't he? That's what's kind of fascinating to me. And he kind of, if I read it correctly here, uh, the Lord says, "Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them." So how do we take it? God kind of, I don't know exactly what that means, but God definitely, we can't let them keep going in this direction or it'll just be bad. So God steps in. So see, again, for hardcore Baptists, we can say major judgment, teach you guys. You can also, if you're kind of the kinder heart, you can look at it and like at the same time, it's also merciful. I can't let these people go no destruction, so I'm going to confuse their language. And then the pun, right? Babel. Babel's like really like the Babel is gate of the gods. They were trying to, and again, what were they doing? Were they building? They were. Zechariah's like trying to build a gateway, a portal, right? A portal where the gods can come down. Now, how far do you take that? See, again, keeping in mind, Nimrod, keeping in mind that the author seems to be kind of hinting at him having secret knowledge of before the flood. And he's trying to bring it back. He's basically bringing the golden age, the old gods, bringing them back. We're going to do this again. And so it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Now, here's something that's I listened to a particular man talk about this. What he believes is going on here is this is the beginning of the original Babylon. We're reading the original sort of Babylon, Hammurabi. Um, and what we're seeing with the scattering, along with the language, is also the end of the Bronze Age. Okay, you have, I guess, evidently this is supposed to be historical. You had a Bronze Age collapse, and it was kind of like Mad Max, right? Where because everything was dependent upon bronze. Because this was really a one world government. I guess Hammurabi. I forget. Oh, I try to remember where. So to do the bronze smelting, you needed tin, which I forget where that came from. And what's the other element? Copper. Copper. And right, and they'd get from this part, and they would ship them all in, and they would put it all, and then they found a way like to smelt it. Right, that's technology. So they had high technology to do that. And I don't remember what the reason what happened anyway. That eventually after so many hundreds of years it went south. And everything went to Mad Max. And by the way, so when you're reading Second Samuel, that's why really like with Saul and we think of Israel, we think of like a giant. It was more like tribes. They were still feeling the effect of that. And I find it fascinating because you got a Tower of Babel. You got this one big, like, all people coming together and then building everything up, making a name for ourselves. And then eventually everything collapsing, everyone scattering and become like Mad Max. And you hear a lot of people thinking like this is our Tower of Babel moment. What's being created is a Tower of Babel, and then we could say, right? You could theoretically, boy, let's just say power grid. just blow up. That would sure send us like a Mad Max with him, honey. You see what I'm saying? Kind of. I was just kind of thinking, boy, you see the similarities there. The same kind of basic, man is bravado, right? Wanting to make a name for himself, wanting to be remembered. Yeah. Anyway, and I guess it's not wrong to have a name because God tells Abram, I'll make a name for you. So God cares about that, but I think it's where we trust in God, right? We trust in God to. So I know, it's like I know what you need. I'll give it to you. So anyway,
But if God remembers
yeah,
and says, I will have
that's right.
you.
That's
what
right.
I think. If I say, I'm going to make a
Yeah.
name for myself
Yeah,
so that I will be remembered.
yeah.
Now it's all about me and God.
Boy, don't we know how that goes? I mean, can you name me the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins uh, in 1990? No. Yeah. So I mean, I mean,
I'm guessing.
yeah. I mean, really, they come and they go, don't they? Yeah. And sometimes we're forced to remember, and that's ironic too, because so you have your countries and you have your narrative mythology, and this is how it came about, and you got your certain people, and now we're at the place where we're finding out, wait a minute, that's not true. That didn't happen. Well, wait.
Exclude God and watch what
Anyway, okay. But it wasn't just that. That's kind of like the physical side of it, okay? Something else also happened, and we've talked about this before, that what God did. Um, in the same, in the, if you go ahead into Deuteronomy 32, chapter 8. Now we're going to kind of, in a backhanded way, get into the Bible discussion on which Bible is the good Bible, the right Bible. Deuteronomy 32, verse 8. So this is Moses, and he's recounting this event, Tower of Babel event. When the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance. So he split them up, gave them their inheritance. When he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. Right? Um, Other versions will say the sons of Israel. But the sons of Israel were not a nation then. And again, the King James Version uses manuscripts that were really AD 1000. Is about as far as they went back. But with the Dead Sea Scrolls, we have manuscripts much earlier. In fact, uh, maybe like 1,000 years BC. So, and in there, some of these manuscripts have sons of God. So meaning, because what happens? What happens when a people begins to live in sin, begins to live their own way, reject God? What does God have to do? He kind of steps back, right? He steps back. It's kind of like, even with us, if we don't want God around, I mean, you can't God just can't vacate. He's there, but right? And so God had put intermediaries, the sons of God. In other words, they were now to kind of to kind of watch over. God's distancing himself from the nations, and he will now form. That's why he will call out Abraham. So God's not through with the nations. Well, we're them. We're other nations. He's going to save them. And part of the Abrahamic covenant would be, right? And all nations of the earth will be blessed through you. But we got to take this route. But anyway, so we can also see from a spiritual standpoint that God now has to, he's distancing himself from the nations and he gives them the right. And then what happens is that now these sons of God, that some of them did not live up to their, right?
I mean, he could have said, let's go down there and destroy them.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be trouble. Let's go down there and destroy them. But he didn't
Doesn't
do
do that.
that.
No.
No, let's go down there, confuse their language,
Yeah.
disperse them.
Yeah.
Now they won't be this tight core
Yeah.
of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he really was very merciful.
Yeah.
Very merciful. And how many times is he merciful to people that don't get it, don't deserve
Mm-hmm.
it? But he's still merciful.
Right. Right.
But I'll be merciful. Yeah.
But this idea too of, because now we're at the foundation, right? This idea of God now dividing up the nations kind of under his administration now, right? Well, we're now, the nations are subjected to, right? Then some of these sons of God kind of, well, they don't do their job. We could see that in Daniel. Remember in Daniel, when Daniel was praying, and I think it was Gabriel who came to him and said that, the Lord heard your prayer. But I've been mixing it up with the right, with the Prince of Persia. And it's clear it's not the ruler, human ruler. It's a powerful angel, territorial angel, and he stopped me for 21 days until Michael, your archangel, won over you, Israel. He came and helped me fight him up. Right, and I'm gonna have to go now, but I have to go mix it up now with the Prince of Greece. So we can already see that there were these powerful entities that had already kind of like do what we do as people. They didn't always follow the Lord. I guess there are some traditions where only Michael the archangel was the only one who stayed true. But in any case, why this is helpful, because this kind of, well, for one, it now helps us to understand the New Testament. Because part now, when we're proclaiming the gospel, that's why Jesus Christ, he is now, all authority has been given to him in heaven and on earth, right? These principalities and powers, they no longer have a say. They do not have a say. We're calling, that's why you see all the apostles going to all the nations of all the earth. That's why Paul was, I want to get to Rome. I want to get here. I want to get there. All these people that we as Jews always thought as they're the pagans worshiping the false gods. Well, now God set them free, right? And that also helps us to explain what Jesus did is he broke the power of the evil one. He broke his power and his hand over people, and that's why we now can preach the gospel openly and the power that it has. And so, anyway, this was the foundation of it, the Tower of Babel. A lot more went on here than what kind of meets the eye. And like I say, we were taught in Sunday school class that basically you had these dolts who were building a tower, trying to, reach all the way up to heaven so they can, look in there, whatever. And God says, no, you can't do that. And I always sat there and go, well, why? I mean, how? You know, no, it wasn't that at all. They were trying to bring their deity down. Okay.
And it worked.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
It worked,
that.
but
That.
not quite like
Well,
they
that's kind of
wanted.
funny, but yeah, the Lord says, "Oh yeah, okay." Kind of like, well, Job. Remember Job? Same thing. Yeah, you mean you? We're gonna have a talk face to face, and God's like, okay,
Here I am.
sure, let's talk about this now. Yes, yes, yeah. In this case, they wanted to bring the God down. Well, guess what? The Lord came down, and yeah, we're gonna sort things out here. No, it wasn't pretty. No, I mean,
But again, God is so merciful, and he doesn't have to be, but he just is.
So it's interesting too. I wonder because it could be said that the readers who were reading this, they knew events like this happened, but they didn't understand what was going on. So imagine knowing something about the dispersion, the bronze, right, whatever, and so they're finding out what happened, like what God did and why He did it. Um, but oh yeah, this story of Babel and the idea of the secret knowledge from before the flood, that's a big thing, and it's big today. I mean, how far you want to get into the weeds? Well, Hitler in Germany was always very fascinated about this hidden technology knowledge, and they were scouring all throughout, even to going into the China, um, looking for the various artifacts, um, the Holy Grail, whatever that is, actually, the spear. I forget what they call it. The spear that was put into the side of Jesus. Right? Remember when the spear? And so there's all of this kind of occultic knowledge amongst the secret societies, right? And they've made claims. That's what secret societies are. Like from your Masons to your Rosicrucians on down, as Illuminati. All these they kind of believe that they have this secret knowledge. They have it in pieces, and they're trying to literally put it all back together. That's what they would say. And of course, whether you want to believe that or not. What's fascinating to me is, well, evidently there were men in Hitler's regime who took that very serious. And because there were certain technologies that they believed they would have that would kind of, and what is fascinating, because we just keep going on this, is that a lot of the UFO stuff that you see, particularly Roswell, there's a connection between the UFO and the Roswell and the spaceships and Nazi technology, right? And there are some who claim that actually, no, it was Nazi technology is what it was, right? There's a lot of really bizarre stuff out there and that was kind of come to my mind. I can't remember, but anyway, that even goes like right on into now today.
This is the cup that Jesus actually had at the last. How would they know?
It may not actually be a cup. Knights Templar also
But the spear.
connected.
How would they know? I mean, to me, it makes no sense.
Well, it doesn't to us uninitiated, and that's exactly what they want. But no, I'm trying to think of even even today. I'm trying to. Yes, it goes. There's this thread that goes, and I find it fascinating because it keeps rearing its head. But in any case, it's the same. It's the same theme that we talked about right here. It's just rebranded. It's all part of the good versus evil, God versus Satan, right? Okay. Um, we got a few more minutes. We'll finish this. Just when you thought. These are the generations of Shem. Notice now, these are the generations of, right? Did you catch that? Now, new section, told up. And notice how generally, just like we saw with creation 1, big overview. Chapter 2 was like, okay, we're going to center in on Adam and Eve. Same here. All three sons. Now we're going to center in on the Shem. And why Shem? No. What? Define we.
The majority of people.
No.
Ham was the bad guy.
No.
Ham
We
was
want.
the bad guy.
Well, if you go we, as in just people in general, we're more Japheth, European. If you go we, as in Christian and Abraham's seed, then yes, Shem. Shem is where the right you have your you had your Hebrews and also Islam, all your kind of revelation nations, right? Your monotheistic, right? They come from the line of Shem. Yeah, yeah. So when you said we, yeah, it all depends on what we you're talking about. Yeah. What? Yeah.
We don't want to be from Ham.
Yeah.
Ham's one of the.
Well, no, you know what?
And it's easy to remember because ham from the pig and that's.
Well, you want to actually want to be careful of that because you know, and actually about your generation's time and mine, there was a teaching going around. I think you probably still going to some churches today that would say that the blacks come from the line of Ham. Therefore, that's why the blacks are the cursed line. Yes, and they would, and that's where look they have a justification of treating different races. So we want to be very careful and understand, right, and how, right, and I know you didn't mean it that way at all, but I'm just saying there, yes, and it's kind of odd. It's really, yeah, it wasn't that long ago. Well, remember, you know, we come Darwin. I mean, when Darwin kind of came in, and we're in the age of enlightenment. We're at the point of we pretty much screwed everything up. And, you know, yeah, we like to think of ourselves as being like sophisticated and we're all progressing. No, no. Glory be to God. Anyway, these are the generations of Shem. When Shem was a mere 100 years old, I'm hearing Jim over there saying, when you get to be my age, when you get to be my age, 100 years old, Jim. You still got a few years to go for you in that. Okay, anyway, he fathered Arpachshad 2 years after the flood, and Shem lived after he fathered Arpachshad 500 years and other sons and daughters. When Arpachshad had lived 35 years, he fathered Shelah. And Arpachshad lived after he fathered Shelah 403 years and had other sons and daughters. So what are you noticing? They don't live as long. Maybe that's why they don't live as long. Maybe they would have held out on having children like Noah did, age 500. You'd have more sanity and more and live longer. I don't know. Anyway, I don't think it's exactly right, but I'd like to think that for now. Sometimes I feel that way more than ever. Yeah, depending on yeah. Okay. Anyway, when Eber had lived 34 years, he fathered Peleg. And Eber lived after he fathered Peleg. And there we go. See 430 years, the other sons and daughters. So you can see in 10 it was a big overview, but whereas now we're okay. When Peleg had lived 30 years, he fathered Reu. And Peleg lived after he fathered Reu 209 years, and the other sons and daughters. Again, if you think, if the thought process is that before the flood, the atmosphere was way different. And maybe the atmosphere had something to do with the long lifespans. Big if.
Because they were living twice as long.
Then maybe that once the flood now is past, because it's definitely after the flood, it seems like they're starting younger. Maybe atmospheric changes. If you go up to the Creation Institute, that's what they'll say. Go see that ark. So there. So if they ask you something like that, so you're already all over it. Oh, I figured this out on my own. Okay. Anyway.
No, we brought our history book.
Yeah.
He knows all of that.
I actually got it from I had the Bible. So no, everything I had I steal from other people. It's just.
What, you know who to steal
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, you know, actually, you know what? If you're curious, just be curious, and this, you know, it does take some. You just start digging. You start, you know, but it does help. That's one thing because you try to find because you only have so much time, so you don't want to waste your time reading garbage. So sometimes make it point you in the right direction, and then from there, you know, okay, who you learn from? Okay, who do you learn from? And right, that's what I do. You kind of venture out, but yes. Okay, anyway, When Sarah had lived 30 years, he fathered Nahor. Oh, we're getting closer. And Sarah lived up after he fathered Nahor 200 years, and other sons and daughters. When Nahor had lived 29 years, verse 24, he fathered Terah. And Nahor lived after he fathered Terah 119 years, and had other sons and daughters. And when Terah had lived 70 years, so look, he waited a little bit longer. He fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Okay. Hey, now what do we notice about the three?
Well, Abram became Abraham. And wasn't Haran the uncle? Lot was his son.
We're going to find out. But what else do we need about the number three? Japheth, Ham, Shem. 3 sons of Noah. Three sons of with right? Okay. Now these are now see, there we go again. Now these are the generations of there's a told off. Only now we're going to center it even more. See, we're driving to this, right? Just before the genealogy was driving to get to Noah. Noah was the man. We're going to start over with Noah. All things are new. All things are new. Oh gosh, here we go again. Tower of Babel. Okay, but God never gives up, right? And remember, in these 70 nations now, and with all the madness that's going on, Babylon, right? Pagan, false deities. It's where Abram's going to be called out of. God's going to call Abram out of that, right? Now, these are generations of Terah. Terah, or Terah, probably better, Terah fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran fathered Lot. Okay? Haran died in the presence of his father Terah, in the land of his kindred, in Ur of the Chaldeans.
We learned about back here. He is the son of.
Yeah, yeah. And if we have our times and dates right, Akita, it was like the city. It was the city. It was we're talking like in New York City, right? It all of its filth and paganism, but all the, all the creature features. And remember, you know, having a name for yourself is being connected to your family. Your family has to keep your name going. So if you leave your family, God's saying leave your family. That means you're basically leaving your past and your present. You're leaving everything that would make you who you are behind. Right? And you're trusting, in this case, Abe's got to trust God. I will make your name great, bro. But he has to trust him, right? I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but it's important that we understand. And Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife, Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Iscah. Now, Sarai was barren. She had no child. That's a theme, isn't it?
Yep.
We're going to see these same kind of themes, right? The last will be first, and the first will be last. Somebody said that.
I think
Jesus said that. Absolutely, yes. Terah took Abram, his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai, his daughter in law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth together from Ur the Chaldeans to go into the land of Canaan, which we will now learn that's what they were supposed to do because God told Abram to go. But, it says here, when they came to Haran, they settled there.
And Haran is one of the sons.
Yeah. So, wait a minute. The days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. So basically, Dad's leading the way. And we're going to find out that it seems as though he was supposed to leave his family behind, but somehow Pops is leading the way, and Pops decides we're going to stay here. There's some traditions about why Terra did that. Has to do with worship of false deities. Iran was a place. I want to say the place of the moon god seen, but I'm not sure on that. But in any case, yeah. We know what happens next, huh? So there we go. So we got these genealogy are like bridges, right? You're kind of bridging us over to first to Noah, right? And now